which is total assets equals total liabilities plus total equity. That means current assets plus fixed assets or net fixed assets, current liabilities plus long-term debt, and if you transfer current liabilities to the left-hand side, this implies net working capital plus net fixed assets equals long-term debt plus total equity. We're just manipulating the same one. Now, total equity is basically paid in capital plus accumulated retained earnings. And when you start the company, you have $100 in capital. Then next year you earn $50 and you don't distribute any of it. That means you retain $50 of earnings for that year. You add that to accumulated retained earnings. Okay, that's pretty much all we're going to say about balance sheet. Let's do some problems with the balance sheets. I'm going to actually do some problems from the quizzes that you're going to see. Which I haven't transferred to your class yet, but I will. These are quizzes where the first question always, are you taking this by yourself or with a partner? If you don't answer it, it's by yourself. If you're doing it with a partner, just say so. Remember, you are allowed to do so. But once you're married, you can get divorced, that's fine, but you're not going to marry anybody else. That's the rule. I'm at the Catholic Church, and there is no special dispensation from Pope. Okay, let's do some numerical stuff. Let's see. Come on. We haven't talked about that yet. I want a problem that's just balance sheet. Okay. There's a problem. Okay, at the beginning of the year, they had retained earnings of $2,200. They earned $3,100 and paid dividends of $2,200. They also issued $5,700 worth of new stock. What's the value of retained earnings account? Now, first of all, here's how retained earnings evolve. Retained earnings beginning plus net income minus dividends. So in this case, we started at 23,200. You added 3,100, and you paid out 2,200. So 24,100 is the answer. You're probably thinking, what happened to that 5,700 issued new stock? That adds to the total equity, but not through retained earnings. That adds by increasing the invested capital. Let's see, this is 21, let's see, 22. Oh, okay. There's a nice problem where, by the way, not all numerical problems are open-ended. Some of them are multiple choice. In this open-ended stuff, start filling the blanks. But if you're within the tolerance, it's automatically graded as correct. I actually manually also look at these things. If it's close enough, I'll give it to you. Or sometimes it's obvious that you mistype stuff. If the answer is 231, you wrote 123. I give you benefit of doubt and thinking that you meant 213. If you haven't, hey, you just got lucky. Let's copy this one. We're looking for current liabilities, okay? Now, what do we have? We have total assets, owner's equity, inventories, and long-term debt. What's the value of current liabilities? So what is something that we learned until now that involves current liabilities? Think about an equation or a formula. You know, the basic accounting identity is there, right? Total assets equals total liabilities plus owner's equity. And total liabilities are current plus long-term debt. And we're given total assets, okay? I know that must equal total liabilities plus total equity. And we're given that too, total equity. So I know everything in this equation except current liabilities. Well, you can either solve it algebraically. Current liabilities is equal to total assets minus long-term debt minus total equity. And that's equal to 18.4 minus 66 minus 7,900. Now, this is a simple equation. You don't need to use Excel for this one. But you arrived at the solution by asking two things. One, what am I looking? Current liability. What do I know that involves current liability? At a minimum, I know two things. Net working capital equals current assets minus current liability. And the expanded version of balance sheet identity. Since I know nothing about current assets or net working capital, that's probably not a good source for solution. We go back to our balance sheet identity. Total assets equals the expanded version, current liabilities plus long-term debt plus total equity. I happen to know all of them except current liability. Just solve for it. Done. You know, this is not exactly a solution of Einstein's general relativity equations, which are impossible to do analytically, except in some special cases.
Have you released these?
No, not yet. I'm going to release them pretty much tomorrow, and it becomes your assignment. These quizzes have typically thousands of questions. You randomly get about 25. So every time you try it, you get a new set. And there's a chance you may see the same question, especially if you do multiple attempts. But remember, it's the maximum that counts. So you do 10 attempts and get 10%. The 11th you get 100%, the 100% counts. Let's figure this out. In these open-ended numerical questions, you're going to see some names that are typically associated with some sort of mythology or a TV show that I'm into. Chapter 2 is all about Stargate. Who's a Stargate fan around here? Stargate SG-1. All right. And you know Anubis.
Stargate's a big show in my family.
Huh?
Stargate was a big show in my family growing up.
Okay. Now, the shop has a net working capital of 4,100. Remember, immediately write it down. The definitions, okay? Current portion of the long-term debt is valued at 1,800. They also have a long-term debt of 11,100. Owner's equity of 22,200. What is the value of Anubis's net fixed assets? Okay. First, do we know something that involves net fixed assets? We do. Total assets equal current assets plus net fixed assets. So if I can figure out current assets and total assets, I'm home, right? So let's kind of think. In terms of liabilities here, total assets is current liabilities plus net long-term debt plus total equity. Do we know total equity here? Let's look at the problem and tell me. Is it given to us? Don't just nod your hand, tell me the number. 22. 2, okay. How about long-term debt? Do we know? 11,100. The only current liability here is the current portion of the long-term debt. So we know all of these. Current liability is 1,800. Long-term debt is 11,100. And equity is 22,200. Okay, we got total assets. Obviously, current liability is 1,800.